There was a day when believing Allah became a crime punishable by fire. Not a metaphor, not a warning, a reality. Imagine standing at the edge of a massive trench, a ditch so wide, so deep, that its bottom is filled with roaring flames. The fire is alive, rising, crackling, consuming everything it touches, and around it, people are gathered, not to be saved, but to be thrown in. Ask yourself this: what kind of world reaches a point where human beings are burned alive, simply because they say, "My Lord is Allah"? Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and write in the comments which country you are watching from. If you are ready, let's begin. This is not a story meant to comfort you. This is a story meant to shake you. Because this didn't happen in darkness alone. It happened in front of people, in front of a king, in front of a society that watched and did nothing. The Quran captures this moment with words so powerful, so direct, that they leave no room for imagination. Cursed were the people of the ditch, the fire full of fuel, when they sat by it, watching what they were doing to the believers. Think about that. They were not forced. They were not unaware. They sat and they watched. And the believers, they had only one crime. They believed. They refused to bow to falsehood. They refused to abandon the truth. They refused to trade their faith for their safety, and for that, they were thrown into fire. Now pause here, because this is where the real question begins. Why? Why would a king, a system, an entire society reach a level where faith itself becomes a threat? Because belief is not just a personal choice. Belief is power. When a person truly believes in Allah, they are no longer controlled by fear. They are no longer owned by authority. They are no longer easily manipulated. And that is dangerous to those who rely on control. This is where the contrast becomes clear. On one side, a king with armies, authority, and absolute power over life and death. On the other side, believers with nothing except their faith. No weapons, no protection, no escape. And yet, they refused to give in. Think about that. What kind of belief gives a person the strength to stand in front of fire, knowing what is about to happen, and still not turn back? This is not normal courage. This is something deeper, something rooted in certainty. Because when a person truly understands who Allah is, the fire of this world becomes small compared to what they are protecting: their faith, their connection, their truth. Now imagine the scene again. One by one, people are brought forward. They are given a choice: walk away from your belief and live, or hold on to it and burn. Simple, clear, no confusion, no middle ground. And this is where most people think they understand the story. They imagine fear. They imagine hesitation. They imagine people breaking under pressure. But what actually happened was something far more powerful. They chose faith. Again and again, they stepped forward, not backward. They accepted the fire, rather than abandoning what they believed. Why? Because to them, losing their faith was a greater loss than losing their life. This is the part we struggle to understand today, because we live in a world where comfort is everything, where safety is everything, where even small sacrifices feel heavy. But they lived in a reality where truth was everything, where faith was everything, where the heart was stronger than the fear of death. And this is why their story was preserved, not just as history, but as a message, because this was never just about fire. This was about a test of what truly matters, when everything else is stripped away. And what you are about to discover is that this moment did not begin with the fire. It began long before, with a system built on control, a king who feared the truth, and a single spark that would change everything. Because the fire in the ditch was not the beginning, It was the result, and to understand why those people were burned alive, you have to go back to where it all started. Long before the flames were lit, before the trenches were dug, before believers stood at the edge of fire, there was a kingdom, a powerful kingdom, organized, controlled, stable on the surface, but built on something fragile underneath. At the center of it all was a king. Not just any ruler, but a man who believed his authority was absolute, a man who was not satisfied with controlling people's actions, but wanted control over their hearts, their beliefs, their thoughts. Because true power is not just when people obey you. True power is when they believe in you. This king understood something dangerous. As long as people depended on him, feared him, and trusted him, his rule would remain unchallenged. But the moment people began to believe in something higher than him, something greater, something beyond his control, everything would begin to collapse. This is where the fear began, not fear of rebellion, but fear of truth. Because truth has a unique power. It cannot be controlled. It cannot be shaped to serve authority. It does not bow to kings. And once it enters the hearts of people, it begins to change them, quietly, powerfully, irreversibly. Now imagine living in that kingdom, a place where obedience was not just expected, but enforced, where questioning authority was not tolerated, where belief itself was monitored. Everything appeared stable, but it was a stability built on fear, and fear always has limits, because fear can control actions, but it cannot control hearts forever. This is what the king failed to understand. He believed that power came from force, from dominance, from making people submit. But he ignored something deeper, that the moment a person connects to Allah, they become free. Not physically, but internally. And that kind of freedom cannot be taken away. Now here is where the system becomes even clearer. The king did not rule alone. He had support, structures, people who reinforced his authority. Among them, a sorcerer, a man who played a critical role in maintaining control. Because the sorcerer gave the king something more than power. He gave him an illusion. He created a sense of mystery, a sense of fear, a sense that the king's authority was backed by something unseen, something supernatural, and people believed it, because when people don't know the truth, they hold on to whatever gives them answers, even if those answers are false. This is how control deepens, not just through force, but through belief, through shaping what people think is real, through convincing them that there is nothing beyond what they are shown. Now pause and think about this. The king had everything, power, authority, control, and yet he was still afraid. Why? Because deep down, falsehood always knows its weakness. It knows that one spark of truth is enough to expose everything. And that spark was coming, not from an army, not from a rebellion, but from something much smaller, something unexpected, a young boy. This is where everything begins to change, because the king's system was strong, but it was not unbreakable. And what he did not realize was that the very system he built would lead to its own exposure, because sometimes truth does not arrive with noise. It arrives quietly, through a single heart, a single moment, a single realization. And once that happens, the entire balance begins to shift. Now the stage is set. A king who cannot tolerate truth, a system built on control and illusion, and a world where belief itself is dangerous. But what the king does not know is that the greatest threat to his power is already growing, quietly, unnoticed. And once it begins to spread, nothing will be able to stop it. And then, from within that very system, came something the king never expected. A boy, not a warrior, not a leader, not someone with power or influence, just a boy, sent on a simple path to learn, because the king, fearing the loss of his sorcerer, had already begun preparing for the future. The sorcerer was aging, his strength was fading, and so the king ordered that a young boy be chosen, someone intelligent, someone capable, to learn the craft and carry it forward. This boy was selected, and every day he would travel to the sorcerer. But something unexpected happened along the way. On that same path, there was another man, a monk, quiet, unknown, not part of the king's system, not connected to power or illusion, but connected to something far greater, truth. The boy began to notice him. At first, just curiosity, then interest, then something deeper, because when the truth is sincere, it attracts, even without force, even without effort. The boy would sit with the monk, listen to him, hear words that were completely different from what he learned from the sorcerer. Words about Allah, about belief, about something beyond the control of kings and systems. And slowly, something began to change inside him. Now think about the contrast. On one side, the sorcerer, teaching manipulation, teaching illusion, teaching control. On the other side, the monk, teaching truth, teaching sincerity, teaching connection with Allah. And the boy stood between both worlds, learning from both, seeing both, but feeling something different, because truth has a weight, a clarity, a kind of peace that falsehood can never replicate. And the boy began to recognize it. Day by day, his heart leaned more toward the monk, more toward belief, more toward Allah. But this was not just a personal change. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Because once the truth enters a heart, it does not stay hidden. It begins to influence actions, decisions, reactions, and that is exactly what happened. One day, as the boy walked his usual path, he encountered something unusual. A beast blocking the road. People were stuck, afraid, unable to move forward. Now this was not just a random moment. This was a test. A moment that would reveal everything. The boy paused, and for the first time, he made a choice. Not between two people, but between two beliefs. He picked up a stone, and he said something that would change his life forever. He said, "O Allah, if the matter of the monk is more beloved to you than the matter of the sorcerer, then kill this beast so that people may pass." Think about that. This was not just a dua. This was a declaration, a decision, a turning point. And then he threw the stone. The beast was killed instantly, and the people passed. At that moment, everything became clear. Not just to the boy, but to everyone watching, because the truth had just been proven, in a way no illusion could match. And the boy knew, without doubt, without hesitation, that what the monk taught was the truth. Now everything changes, because belief is no longer hidden. It is confirmed, it is experienced, it is real. And from that moment, the boy was no longer the same. He began to rely on Allah, to trust Him, to call upon Him. And something extraordinary began to happen. People started noticing. The blind began to see. The sick began to heal through the boy, but not because of him, because of Allah. And this is where the real danger began, because the truth was no longer quiet. It was spreading, it was visible, it was undeniable. And the more it spread, the more the king's control began to weaken, because people were starting to believe in something greater than the king, something beyond his reach, something he could not control. And that was a threat he could not ignore. What started as a small spark in the heart of a boy was now becoming a fire of truth, one that would soon confront the king himself. And when that moment comes, there will be no turning back. At first, the king did not notice, or perhaps he chose not to notice, because what was happening did not look like a rebellion. There were no armies, no weapons, no open defiance, just people, quietly changing, quietly believing, quietly turning towards something the king could not see and could not control. But truth does not stay hidden forever. It grows, it spreads, and eventually it becomes impossible to ignore. The boy, who once walked unnoticed through the streets, was now being spoken about. His name was being mentioned. His actions were being witnessed. People were talking about what they had seen, what they had experienced, what they could no longer deny. The blind, seeing, the sick, healing, the desperate, finding relief, and all of it, pointing to something beyond the king. Now pause here, because this is where the real tension begins. The king did not fear the boy himself. He feared what the boy represented, because the moment people begin to believe that their help, their healing, their hope comes from Allah, they no longer depend on the king. And once dependence is broken, control begins to collapse. This is the moment when power becomes afraid, not loud, not visible, but deeply, internally, unstable. The king began to hear the reports. At first, disbelief, then irritation, then something darker, fear, because falsehood can survive many things. It can survive silence, it can survive ignorance, but it cannot survive the truth when it becomes visible. So the king made a decision. The boy would be brought before him, not as a student, not as someone under his system, but as a threat. Now imagine that moment. A young boy, standing in front of a king who controls life and death, a king who is used to obedience, used to fear, used to being unquestioned, and in front of him, someone who is no longer afraid. This is where the contrast becomes undeniable. On one side, absolute worldly power. On the other hand, unwavering faith. The king questioned him. Where did this ability come from? Who gave you this power? Who is behind what you are doing? And the boy answered, with something the king was not prepared for, not with hesitation, not with fear, but with certainty. He said, "It is from Allah, not from me, not from you, from Allah." At that moment, everything became clear. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a mistake. This was a direct challenge. Because the king's authority was built on one idea, that he was the source, the provider, the one people depended on. And now, that illusion was breaking. Right in front of him. The king's reaction was not immediately calm. It was anger. But beneath that anger was something much deeper, loss of control. Because when power begins to slip, it reacts, not with patience, but with force. The king demanded answers. He demanded submission. He demanded that the boy return to the system, to the illusion, to control. But the boy refused. And that refusal changed everything, because now the situation had moved beyond quiet belief. It had become an open truth, open defiance, and the king could no longer ignore it. He had to act, not just to stop the boy, but to stop what was spreading. Because if one person can stand firm, others will follow. And that is exactly what was already happening. So the king made a decision that would define everything that followed. This was no longer about controlling belief. This was about destroying it, not quietly, not indirectly, but publicly, decisively, and brutally. Because when falsehood feels threatened, it does not negotiate, it eliminates. The boy would be punished, not just to silence him, but to send a message to everyone. That belief comes with a cost, and that cost would soon become visible to all. This is the moment of no return, the point where the story shifts from hidden change to open confrontation, from quiet belief to public sacrifice. And what comes next will test not just one boy, but an entire group of believers, because the king is about to do something that history will never forget. And the fire is about to be lit. And then the order was given, not in secret, not in silence, but openly, publicly, so that everyone could see. Because the king no longer wanted to hide his power. He wanted to display it. He wanted to crush belief, not just in the hearts of a few, but in the eyes of an entire society. So trenches were dug deep, wide, prepared with intention, and inside them fire was lit. Not a small fire, but a roaring, consuming blaze, fed with fuel, rising higher and higher, until it became something terrifying to even look at. Now imagine standing there, the heat pressing against your skin, the sound of flames cracking, roaring, swallowing everything they touch. The air itself is heavy, suffocating, and in front of that fire, people are gathered. Not as spectators, as victims. One by one they are brought forward, and the choice is repeated: leave your belief and live, or hold on to it and burn. This is the moment where everything becomes real, because belief is easy until it is tested. Words are easy until they come with a cost. And now, the cost is visible. Fire, death, pain. Now pause and think about this deeply. What would you do, standing there, seeing what is happening, watching others being thrown in, hearing their cries, feeling the fear rising inside you? Would you hold on, or would you step back? This is the question that defined them, and what they chose is what makes this story unforgettable. They chose faith, not once, not twice, but again, and again, and again. Each person stepped forward, knowing exactly what would happen. No illusions, no hope of escape, just certainty. Certainty in Allah, certainty in what comes after, certainty that this fire is not the end. This is what gave them strength, because when a person truly believes, death is not destruction, it is a transition, and that understanding changes everything. Now look at the contrast. On one side, fire, pain, destruction. On the other, faith, calm, unshaken hearts. The king expected fear. He expected people to break, to cry, to abandon their belief, to save themselves. But instead, he saw something he could not understand. People choosing Allah over their own lives. This is what makes this moment so powerful, because it exposes something deep about human nature, that when faith is real, it is stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger even than death. And then, there is one moment that stands out, a moment that captures everything. A woman holding her child, standing at the edge of the fire. Now the test becomes even heavier, because it is not just about her, it is about her child. Her instinct, her love, her fear, all pulling her back. She hesitates. For a moment, she hesitates, and this is human. This is real, because faith does not remove emotion, it strengthens it. But then, something happens, something that shows the depth of this test. The child speaks. A baby, who cannot normally speak, speaks, and says, "Be patient, O mother, for you are upon the truth." Think about that. In the moment of greatest fear, Allah sends reassurance, not from above, but from the very thing she feared losing, her child. And in that moment, everything becomes clear. She steps forward and chooses Allah. This is not just courage. This is something beyond that. This is certainty. This is complete trust. And one by one, they continue until the fire consumes them. But here is what most people miss. The king thought he had won. He thought he had ended the problem, destroyed belief, silenced truth. But what he did not understand was that he had done the opposite, because truth does not die with people. It lives through their sacrifice, their story, their choice. And what happened that day was not just a tragedy. It was a message that would be preserved, revealed in the Quran, and remembered until the end of time. Because those who were burned did not lose, they were honored, and those who lit the fire did not win, they were exposed, and what remains now is not the flames, but the lesson, a lesson that reaches you today and asks you, if your faith were tested like this, what would you choose? Now pause and bring yourself back to the present, because it is easy to listen to this story and place it in the past, to see it as something distant, something that happened long ago, something that has nothing to do with your life today. But that is not why this story was revealed. This story was not preserved just to be remembered. It was preserved to be understood, and more importantly, to be lived, because the fire of that time may no longer exist in the same form, but the test still does, just in different ways. Today, you may not be standing in front of a trench of fire. You may not be forced to choose between belief and death in a single moment, but you are still being tested, quietly, daily, constantly, in your choices, in your priorities, in what you hold on to, and what you let go of. Ask yourself this honestly: how often do you compromise your values for comfort? How often do you stay silent when truth requires courage? How often do you choose ease over what is right? These may seem like small decisions, but they are part of the same test, because the essence of that story was never about fire. It was about faith under pressure, and pressure still exists. Not always loud, not always visible, but real. Sometimes it comes in the form of distraction, pulling you away from your prayers, from your remembrance, from your connection with Allah. Sometimes it comes in the form of doubt, questions that slowly weaken your certainty, thoughts that make you hesitate. Sometimes it comes in the form of society, expectations, norms, pressures that push you to fit in, even if it means stepping away from what you believe. And sometimes it comes from within, your own desires, your own struggles, your own moments of weakness. This is the modern test. Not always a fire outside you, but a fire within you, a constant pull between what is easy and what is true. Now look at the contrast again. The people of the ditch faced one moment, one clear choice, one visible test, and they chose Allah. We face many moments, smaller choices, repeated decisions, and often we hesitate. This is why their story matters, because it reminds you what faith really looks like, not when it is easy, but when it costs you something, when it requires sacrifice, when it demands strength. And here is the most important part. Allah did not tell this story to make you feel weak. He told it to make you stronger, to show you what is possible, to show you that the human heart, when connected to Him, can reach a level of strength that goes beyond fear, beyond pain, beyond anything this world can take from you. So what do you do with this? You reflect, you become aware, you begin to take your faith seriously, not just as something you believe, but as something you live. You protect it, you nurture it, you hold on to it, even when it feels difficult. Because the truth is, you may never face a fire like theirs, but you will face your own tests, and when those moments come, your strength will depend on what you have built inside you. So start building, start strengthening, start returning to Allah sincerely, consistently, because faith is not built in one moment. It is built daily, quietly, through your actions, through your choices, through your connection with Him. And remember this: those who were burned are honored, remembered, and raised in status, because they chose Allah when it mattered most. And you are being given the chance every single day to choose Him too. So ask yourself, before you sleep tonight, before you move forward with your life, what will you choose? Comfort or truth? Ease or faith? This world or what comes after? May Allah strengthen our hearts. May He make us firm upon the truth. May He protect us from every test, seen and unseen. And may He make us among those who choose Him, not just when it is easy, but when it matters most. Ameen. Subscribe to the channel now so you do not miss the upcoming videos. We ask for your du'as as we are going through difficult days. We especially need your prayers so that these videos can continue. See you in the next video. May Allah be pleased with you all.